I hope that you were able to watch the update from a couple of days ago on Russia concerning, we focused on Russia and actually the idea of Magog and Gog. Remember him, I think, is a spiritual principality who shows up in Revelation, shows up in Ezekiel. We know he has to be spiritual because he's alive for 1,000 years or whatever it is. Hope that you were able to watch that and how God is going to use him like he did the prince of Greece and the Assyrian, the rod of my anger, those kinds of things, playing into the hand of God, using the hand of God and his servants, and both, we would say evil servants and good servants. Remember, he uses them. He doesn't cause their heart to be evil. They are already evil. But we will follow up. I think we'll hopefully finish the hand of God tonight at the end of this. So let's just open up in prayer. And Lord, we worship you and thank you so much for your grace and your mercy. Thank you for the sunshine, the warmer weather. We just look forward to spring. And Solomon says that the Song of Solomon says that winter is over. Come out, and so I think that you're probably going to come after winter, Lord. You said that you don't want the flight of the Israelites to be in the winter. To pray that that's not the case. So we look forward to spring. We look forward to seeing the fall feasts and recognizing Israel again as your timepiece and your church, the rapture of the church in your timing as well. So we look forward to those things. Until then, help us to understand these times, to encourage each other, and to just be interested in what you're doing and seeing the hand of God behind everything so that we are encouraged in Jesus' name. Amen. So the last slide that I left with on the Russian Magog issue a couple of days ago was a earthquake slide that didn't have much on it. This is actually from a week ago. This was one day a week ago. Very significant. Those are a bunch of 6s and 5s surrounding the rim of fire there. And you just see the displacement going on around this rim. So it is this roller coaster thing where it's very active that day, and then it got real quiet for a few days, and last week was real quiet a couple days ago again. But there is a ton of energy there. What I also do is I look at the volcanoes along the west coast. I look at Mount Hood, Mount St. Helens, all of them, even down to Mount Jefferson and Adams and Crater Lake. And I watch those periodically because it shows pressure coming into the west there. And significant pressure continuing. It's been going this way for a decade or more. But this is a pretty significant day, actually, all one day. I thought I would throw this out there because we mentioned a little bit last week about the jewels and the gold and the things that they're finding in Saudi, underneath the Saudi sands, the peninsula there, and around Africa and other places. And here's an enigma: the largest ever cut diamond on display in Dubai ahead of an auction. Look how big that thing is, massive. An auction house in Dubai has unveiled the largest ever cut diamond, named the Enigma, ahead of its sale, where it is expected to go for $5 million just for a rock. The rare black Carbonado diamond, which was acquired in the 1990s by its current owner, was cut into shape that is based on the Middle East palm symbol of the Kashma, which stands for strength and it stands for protection, according to the auction house. Kashma is also an Arabic word for the number of 5. Despite being one of the most difficult substances, the experts were able to turn the diamond weighing 555 carats into a 55-face jewel. Because of its carbon isotopes and high hydrogen count, experts believe that the diamond was created over 2.6 billion years ago. This is another one, by the way, when either a meteorite or an asteroid hit the Earth. Last year, a 101-carat diamond, pearl-shaped diamond named the Key, was purchased from Sotheby's for $12 million and was paid for by cryptocurrency. So jewels and things down there along Africa in particular and Saudi Arabia. Another interesting thing that's coming up more and more, and we've been paying attention to this, playing into the the one world government, the global government, the mark of the beast kind of an idea. Samsung has built the first ever fingerprint security chip for payment cards, employees' IDs, and more. It'll carry basically everything you need to get into the bank. It's a fingerprint security IC for biometric payment cards. So that's the first ever, and Samsung's on the lead with that. Samsung has revealed what it calls the industry's first all-in-one fingerprint security chip, biometric, with a fingerprint sensor, stores and authenticates data with a tamper-proof secure element, and analyzes it with a secure processor. While primarily designed for payment cards, it can also be used for student or employee ID membership or building access, the company said. No PIN, no keypad. So you just put your finger on there. And mainly, though, the new microchip could make it easier for banks and others to make biometric payment cards. The solution performs in line with the MasterCard's latest security specs for payment cards, for also conforming to international security standards for protecting high-value assets against significant risks. According to Samsung, last year, Samsung announced that it was collaborating with MasterCard, and if you pay attention to any of these card companies, MasterCard really is one of the most devious ones out there. MasterCard on a biometric scanning payment card with a built-in fingerprint scanner. So, along these same lines is something very interesting. Now, you remember what's happening here with Taiwan. The COVID chips, the COVID has come out and has caused a lot of decline in chip processing and those kinds of things. And because of what the Chinese is doing with Taiwan and all those other things, Intel will now spend $20 billion to build what it hopes will be the world's largest or biggest chip-making hub in Ohio. So this is, again, one of those things, when people start making decisions about the world, there's going to be a backlash. And so China's affecting, COVID's affecting Taiwan, China's affecting Taiwan. So Intel is going to take it upon themselves to move a plant to Ohio. We're pretty happy to hear that. We're glad to hear that. That's good. That will hopefully drive some of the vehicle prices and some other prices back down, but that's one of those things. Let's get into Omicron, and we could spend a month on Omicron. It's not going away. Can I give you my opinion? My opinion that it is a real virus. Our whole family had it last week. I won't tell you how I got rid of mine very fast. It went very fast, and thank you, Jeannie, for some help there with that as well. But so the idea now is that Omicron is ruling the planet, and the fearmongers are out in mass saying that it is a very highly contagious virus, and it is fairly highly contagious. And it's affecting bigger numbers, and it probably is. So because it's affecting bigger numbers, it's making more, or as many, they say as many, the numbers that I'm kind of listening to, there are as many sick, hospitals are still having issues and stuff. But so I'm not going to go into those because I don't want to be wrong on those. However, is it, I'm asking a question, YouTube, so don't throw me off of here. Is it more predominant, quicker spreading, so it's affecting more, so more are getting sick, and so you got basically the same numbers and the same problem, but is it getting weaker? We don't know. Again, you've got the whole thing on both sides of the aisle here, pro-vax and con-vax. But the issue is, I can tell you this, that the earth is getting tired of it. The planet, the people are getting tired of it. And it's going to be very interesting how long these governments will hide from this stuff and push their agendas. Trudeau's under a lot of attack right now. Denmark, I think it was Sweden, and some other ones are saying, we're done with this. All the mandates are off. A bunch of them in the UK are off. Tuesday, the Biden administration withdrew its vaccine or test mandate for businesses. 100 employees after the Supreme Court blocked the requirement, ruling that it was a federal overreach. Praise the Lord. The administration is asking for the existing lawsuits against it to be considered moot. So a boom on them. The latest COVID variant is 1.5 times more contagious than Omicron and already circulating almost half of the U.S. That's today's. I just pulled this off the web. And this has been in the news for about a week, maybe, this new variant. And they're already saying it's in almost half of the U.S. So I don't know how they get this data so fast. I'm telling you, I just don't trust. I still don't trust anybody. Some of the things that people have been saying a year or two ago about what the vax was going to do and those kinds of things, it seems like there's some validity to those things, but still, really, nobody knows where this is going, and the governments are taking full advantage of taking full advantage. The wealth of the 10 richest men doubled during the pandemic. It's all social media, basically. I mean, a lot of it is social media. The industry incomes, look at the pharmaceuticals up there on top from 2000 to 2021. Semiconductors and software is in the middle there, tech, and then markets down S&P markets. But pharmaceuticals is on top. Pharmaceuticals. Revelation 18:23. The light of the lamp will shine in you no more, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride will be heard in you no more. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, and all nations were deceived by your sorcery. The word there is pharmakia in Greek. It's sorcery. That's what the Bible claims it is. And we're going to stand behind that. YouTube, do what you're going to do. But this is sorcery, and God hates it. We have an immune system that works these things out. People are going to get sick. People are going to die. It is my strong opinion that these variants have to work themselves out. You can't stop a virus. You can't. It's already proven. 2 years into this, and they're not stopping it. It seems exacerbating. It keeps going. But at some point, I believe, this is my opinion, YouTube, that it's going to wear itself out because that's the way God has made our immune systems. Now, people need help. People have immune system issues. And there's no doubt about it. And I think people, if they take vaccines, need to do it in faith. If they don't take vaccines, they need to do it in faith. I think it could possibly be helping somebody, some people. I don't know that. I have very good friends, Christian, lovely mentors and stuff who are taking this and they're healthy and they're living and they're working through this stuff. So I'm not gonna demean that at all. But what I am saying is the planet is not going to stop this virus, and it hasn't. And it's been a complete lie that they could. So, on the term pharmakia, the use of the magic, often involving drugs and the casting of spells upon people, to practice magic, to cast spells upon, to engage in sorcery, magic, or sorcery. With your magic spells, you deceived all the peoples of the world. This right here could very well get us on the next series here. So just be prepared. So the UK police are looking into a potential breaches of COVID-19 regulations in Downing Street. They want to arrest UK Johnson, Prime Minister Johnson. He had a party, and it was a no-mask party, and they just went out and had a good time, and he's defending himself on that. They want to arrest him. They want to take him down. The Israeli trial, world's first finds fourth dose is not good enough. And again, it's really interesting how many times Israel continues to come up on the Omicron virus, on the transgender and LGBT thing, on abortion. It keeps coming up right in the face of God, and they're in news, international headlines about this stuff. And they were on top of it. They were ahead of most of the nations on the vaccine and shutting down over and over and over. and the fourth dose is not good enough. This is preposterous. That's just the way, I can't put it any other way. Israel is now #1 in COVID cases. I think I pulled this off the web yesterday. Per capita, proving all draconian vaccinations, lockdowns, and restrictions are utterly worthless and stupid. YouTube, take it up with natural news. Okay, we're just... the Dems overreach. The poll says 59% want government to confine unvaxxed in homes. This is getting to the Australian thing. This is getting to the lockdown. There's lots of stuff being said out there about the unvaxxed and about the other people by these progressives and these other people that are pretty vicious. Pretty vicious. Speaking of vicious, and I didn't have this up here, it just came to my mind. You saw the funeral with the young man, the young cop that was killed in New York, and thousands of cops came out, and it was a beautiful thing. And the wife came out, and she laid it on the DA, and it was awesome. She's saying, you know, you guys are killing us literally, and it's time to stop, and we're not going to quit and stuff. And one local actress was walking down one of the New York streets. I saw this today, and she's saying, all this for one effing cop, and all this for, you know, blah, 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 blah. And she went off. She got sacked that day. She got fired. But it's really, the insanity on the planet is ridiculous, and it is dividing people, and hatred is rising high, and that's just, I mean, you name it. We got wars and rumors of wars, right? And then the earthquakes, and then we've got the unprecedented snow in Boston. That's the word, unprecedented. A record snows in Boston. I mean, that's lake effect snow. You get that year after year after year for hundreds of thousands of years, whatever it is, and they have a record snow in Boston. So it just tells you that we're in a very, very, very strange times. Report 70,000 businesses in Israel failed to survive 2021. Shut them down. I still go back to the Old West. I'm going to go do my thing. If I want to go eat here, I'm going to eat here. If I want to wear a mask, I'm going to wear a mask. If I want to suck through a straw through a mask, I'm going to do it. Leave me alone. If I'm going to have a vaccine, I'm going to do it. This is the Western way. This is the American way. And the world is, it is insane to me, the depth of depravity, but the depth of stupidity in the mind of mankind right now. It is appalling, and it's got to just be chewing on God's heart. So before we get into the Middle East and Russia and Ukraine here just a little bit, and again, I did a good update on that, so I hope you look. But before that, watch everybody's taking advantage of this now. And again, the gates were open in Afghanistan. When Biden just up and left and killed 13 of our people, caused the death of 13 of our people. And those other things. And we left out of there and left lots of people behind and all that stuff. So North Korea is firing off unprecedented missiles. This month's flurry of missile tests were reminiscent of the heightened tensions in 2017 when North Korea conducted multiple nuclear tests and launched its largest missiles, including some that flew over Japan. North Korea leader Yoon has said he is no longer bound by the moratorium, which included a stop to nuclear weapons tests, and was announced in 2018 amid a flurry of diplomacy and summits with U.S. President Trump. So now he has fired his longest test missile ever, I think just yesterday or the day before. So North Korea is at it. China is still at it. China may use the Ukraine crisis to seize Taiwan, intel source warns. Now, this is not new. We've been hearing this. You've even heard this on Fox. But this is out today. Actually, yesterday, I'm sorry. But I did see another thing today. In fact, I did see a post just before I left that I think 4 or 6 Chinese jets flew over Taiwan again. So they continue to push the agenda for Taiwan. And I'm just going to go in saying this. This is my strong opinion. Putin is not afraid either. There's nothing for him to be afraid of. The only thing that's going to hurt him is sanctions. The money is going to hurt him. However, he is tired of the U.S. He is tired of the West. He's not concerned about money. He himself is rich. He'll go hide in a, tunnel somewhere and live for the rest of his life as a rich hermit, but or the Mediterranean. But they're not concerned about this. They want their borders expanded. They want their resources. They both want resources. It's interesting. The Ezekiel 38 is all about plunder. In Isaiah 17, read that whole thing. What is it about? It's all about plunder. Isaiah 17 is connected with Ezekiel 38. But at the end of Isaiah 17, it says, we will plunder those who plunder us. It's going to turn on them. In other places, says that Israel will plunder their enemies, and Edom and Moab and other places. So it's going to turn on them, but they're all coming for their greed. It's just all about greed. Except for, of course, we know that Shia Islam in particular right now, Shia Islam, is about the destruction of Israel and the United States. So we know that. So China, let's go back. China may use Ukraine crisis to seize Taiwan. China is moving into Iraq to extract oil more and more. They're already there. But there's another deal here. The Chinese company, China Petrol and Chemical Corp, has signed a deal to develop the Masaraya gas fields in Diyala. The field near the Iranian border is expected to produce 300 million standard cubic feet per day of gas, which will be used for electricity generation and various industrial projects with an area of 150 kilometers squared, and gas reserves estimated at 4.5 trillion standard cubic feet. Masaraya is the second largest field in Iraq. That's huge, and by the way, that pits them right up against Russia. Right, and I would say Turkey too, because remember, Turkey says, Iraq is ours. That's the old Ottoman Empire. We want it back. And now that all that Kirkuk and the northern Iraqi oil and gas is there, that's on our property. So they all want this. After it's the second largest after the Akkas field in the Anbar province, which is extreme north in Iraq. Sinopec will have a 49% interest in the field. Oh man, that's ridiculous. There's just no way given the 49%. With Iraq's state-owned Midland Oil Company having 51%, previous information suggests that the contract will run for 25 years. To give somebody 49% of something in your country is stealing. This is what China's been doing for decades, and in the last decade in particular, they are stealing the Earth's resources and ports and all kinds of things. Now this was disturbing, and I always look for trends in places where there's some iffies, here going here. Watch this. South Korea pays Iran's UN dues with frozen assets. So what are the South Koreans doing? The payment was made Friday in cooperation with the U.S. and the UN after Iran made an emergency request to South Korea to pay the dues, the finance ministry said in a statement Sunday. Iran has more than $7 billion in funds for oil shipments frozen at 2 South Korea banks due to sanctions. Iran's voting right at the UN Assembly is expected to immediately restore the payment. The ministry added the Islamic Republic was South Korea's third largest Middle Eastern trade partner. There's the deal. Before the United States unilaterally withdrew from a 2015 nuclear deal between Tehran and world powers and reimposed crippling sanctions. It's all about money. And South Korea, this is interesting, that South Korea would do this. They're partnering with us. We're supposed to be sanctioning the bad guys, but now they're going to pay $7 billion in funds. Here's another interesting thing, that there's been several reports coming out of Iran and other places, but Iran's even saying this, that we're not being hurt by these sanctions. We're selling more oil right now than we have in a long time. The oil uptick is huge. And so, this is ridiculous, and the world continues to just kind of cave into Iran. This is, it's very interesting. You would think Iran has a blessed hand on it. And Russia does kind of a little well. You know, like they're able to maneuver and get away and go. It's like they have a blessing of some kind. Do they have a blessing of some kind? They're the rod of God's anger. They're Ezekiel 38. And they're coming down, and they're going to be in a position to be able to come down. And again, I go back to Putin and Russia. I believe he's going to succeed because that's what the Bible says he does. He's going to be strong, and he's going to be able to do what he wants. Will there be some pushback? Will there be some problems? Will there be wars? Probably. Dead people, maybe. All that kind of stuff. However, he's going to succeed because the Bible said he was going to succeed. Now, 2 planes. Now, here's, now, again, I'm touching on South Korea, North Korea, and China. Here's Turkey outside the Middle East. 2 planes carrying 1,000 Turkish-trained Haremrad police and Gorger forces landed in Beledweyne, central Somalia, to help Hirshabelle leader visit the city. Kudaway has been denied entry for 1 year after locals opposed his 2020 election, saying it violated the power sharing deal. So this is just another, I want to step back every once in a while and tell you that Turkey is a huge player in Africa, especially along the Horn, Sudan, and then down in Somalia, okay? And so so 2 planes carrying these, and I mentioned this a month or 2 ago, that the Turks were going down there. Their biggest training base outside of Turkey is in Mogadishu, Somalia, and they're using their Turkish arms and Turkish training and Turkish languages to raise these men up. And this is a dangerous precedence being set in, especially in Africa. So Turkey is on the move as well, taking advantage of what's the chaos in the world. So let's do, we don't want to skip Ukraine. This is still, I got to say, probably my biggest picture, my favorite picture here, because it really does show that Putin was way ahead of Biden. Putin was way ahead of Biden in 2013 and 14. When he took Crimea, he knew for a fact that President Obama wouldn't do anything. Now, you know who he was afraid of? He was afraid of Hillary Clinton.
Oh.
And he should have been. He should have been. Because we know what Hillary Clinton does. She kills leaders. She goes in and gets it done. She is a hawk. Now, she's all out there. She's, remember the reset button with Russia? Yeah. She was doing that for cameras and stuff. She is dangerous. I don't think we would be here with her. And I'm not saying, we might be in World War III actually with her. It might be even worse. But what I am saying is this, that Obama drew 3 red lines in Syria and Assad crossed them all. And he allowed Russia to come in to Syria. He allowed Russia to take Crimea. And so this is a disaster that's been waiting for a while. Notice this didn't happen on Trump's watch. And Trump was really one of the first ones to send a ton of anti-tank artillery and stuff into Ukraine. He was already sending stuff before he was elected out. Quote marks there. So he knows for a fact that, well, you gray hairs and what's John Haller call him, the Biden administration is going to say to play the same game. They're not going to do anything about it. So what does he have to lose except money? And he is counting the cost. Trust me, he is counting the cost. But what's it worth? And when things settle down, the EU, see, here's the deal. There's no pipelines to the EU. There's no tankers in reality going to the EU. Most of the gas is coming out of Russia. And I showed you some maps, and we'll go back into those maps at some point, showing you the massive amount of gas lines. They all go west. The primary consumers there are in the EU. They don't produce. They have a little bit in the North Sea, UK and all that. But Russia is the major producer, and they are the consumers, and he's got them right by the neck. and he's already turning down the gas pipes and stopping deliveries. So this is the latest. This was yesterday, after the tit for tat between the United States and Putin. And Putin, remember, he's got two separate treaties, really. He wants to have the EU sign one and the United States sign one. And he wants the United States out of all the NATO countries. And I've showed you those maps. I showed you where all that lines up on the last video, so go watch that. So the United States basically said, no, we're not appeasing you. And so we're not gonna help you out here. So Putin's saying, okay, that's it. We're gonna see. The U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs says that Russia is moving up to 30,000 troops to Belarus. So this, you can see the date on this is just about 4 hours ago. They are still moving troops. I think I have a map here. They have slowed down some, but of course it's Sunday. The news agencies are kind of quieted down now, but you can still see the trains. They're still moving troops into Belarus. This is the Donetsk area where they've been fighting for a decade. People dying and getting shot there basically every day. These are all Russian troops. They're all lined up along there. And then this is Belarus over here. And so you still got this these trains moving west into Belarus. And they're congregating along the southern sections here, of course. So basically, they're surrounded. Ukraine is surrounded, basically, except for, and remember, I want to remind you, here's Moldova. Just keep an eye on that. That's becoming a real rich target area right now for the Turks and the Russians. The Turks have a significant amount of ethnic folks there that they want back and they want to look out for. They also have some in Ukraine, by the way, and they're very concerned. The Turks are very concerned about Russia's move here, and they're putting up against Russia. We'll see how that goes, but you know already, Ezekiel 38, they're going to be together. So this is another issue they have to work through. Russia and Turkey keep butting heads. They butt heads in Libya, butt heads in Syria, butt heads in Belarus, and Ukraine and Moldova, and other places in Armenia and Azerbaijan. Isn't it interesting that these two have been enemies for centuries, and they have a lot of pinpoints, linchpins out there that are detrimental to their friendship, but they're working through them. And that's a demonic thing or a spiritual thing, isn't it? It's very interesting. So we're going to keep track of here because in the southwestern section here, there's a huge, a good-sized Turkish group, but that Turkish group are Christians. They're Orthodox Christian, some kind of Russian or Greek Orthodox, which Putin caters to, okay? So he's trying to win them over. And the Turks are saying, hey, those are Turks, we're looking out for them. Yeah.
Do we know how old Putin is? Is he in his 60s?
Yeah. I'll look that up again. I can't remember. Let me look that up. That's a good question.
I heard a person on the news last night or the night before say that the Ukrainian president is mad at Biden for blowing it all out of proportion and he doesn't want his people to panic.
Yeah. We mentioned some of that on the last update. Now, so what Zelensky was saying, what Zelensky was saying was that Putin, he's 69. What Biden has done is basically turned us over to the enemy. Like, they're coming in and we can't stop them. And I'm up here and I'm a preacher, and I'm going by what I know the Bible says. Hopefully I start there. And then kind of when I know a little bit about the military, and I keep track of this stuff a lot and read a lot, and I can give you my opinion, and I can say something like that. But when a world leader, really, the guy who really has the wherewithal to stop everything, if he really just wanted to, he could put a cease to a bunch of this for him to come up and say, hey, get ready, you're going to get invaded. We can't help you. That's kind of the way he was coming across. And that made Zelensky mad. And he kind of has a right. Now he kind of squelched it down a little, walked it back a little bit. But you can't be going to say that. But to be frank with you, General Milley is kind of saying the same thing. And, again, I'm a preacher. And I can say they're not doing anything to help them except send arms. There's no troops going into Ukraine. And I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not sure that there should be right now. What should have been done a long time ago. This has been a decade coming. And we're way behind the 8 ball again on this. And by the way, while we have some treaties and things with Ukraine, they're not part of EU or NATO. They're not part of NATO. And so, that kind of stops some of that process there. But now we're trying to say, well, hey, they're a sovereign state, so we're going to back them up. Well, what are you going to back them up with? 8,500 troops? I mean, you're joking at me. And, like we said, Germany, we already mentioned Germany sending helmets and medical supplies. Come on, you guys. Germany is one of the most powerful nations in the EU, and they're not stepping up. Why? Because Russia has them right there with the gas. It's all about money and gas. And I don't trust Russia, Germany, the German government. Department of Defense Press Secretary John Kirby said on Thursday that some of those troops, so this came out a couple days ago. Kirby saying there's some troops going over. They're not sure where, but they're coming from Fort Bragg, Colorado, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, Davis-Monthan, Arizona, Fort Hood, and some other places. Now watch. Looks like a lot, right? That's a lot of places, right? Watch. These units all told include medical support, aviation support, logistics support, and of course combat formations. Kirby said, though he would not say how many of the 8,500 troops were combat troops. It's like, it's telling Putin, listen, we want to be serious, but we can't be serious. We hope you don't go in. This is fairly ridiculous. Any troops that we deploy troops to the region are those troops that are already in the region. See, they're already over there. They're already TDY, temporary duty, from these places over there. And they're just going to maneuver them into position. Fewer than 200 U.S. troops are currently in Ukraine. And again, I want to be careful to say right now we should send troops in Ukraine. I'm not sure we should. I'm thinking that we probably should have had a buildup of some kind. And let's go back to what President Trump is saying. And he had a lot of stuff right. He had a lot of stuff right, still does. And I'm telling you, one of the biggest things he had right was this. It is the EU's fault for not being ready for this. It's the EU's fault. Now, I will also say this. It's actually the EU's fault that this is happening. For this reason. The EU told Russia, we will not move NATO troops east. And they lied. So since that time, really since 1980, Putin's been mad. The Russians have been upset. You guys have lied to us for decades, and so we're tired of it. We're tired of it. That on top of the oil crunch, and now the gas and oil prices are going through the roof. Do you know how much money Russia's making right now? They're making a killing. And now if they see any way to get any more oil wells and all this stuff, they're going to go for it. So are the Chinese, so are the Iranians and the Turks. They're going for the oil and the gas. So now is the time to make a move on a country that has left its morals and spirituality and church and even its people behind, literally, in Afghanistan and some other places. And we've got a president that's falling up the stairs on Air Force One, and God is saying, hey world, here's some pickings here, and it's a very scary and very sad issue that we're in. Britain is really the only one putting out right now. Britain is considering major NATO deployments amid Ukraine crisis. Remember, they won't, I don't believe that they will send him into Ukraine. What they want to do, what the West wants to do right now, and I think if I had to guess, all the generals are getting around saying, okay, you know, we're probably not going to stop him from going in to the Donbass and some of these places in extreme northern and eastern Ukraine, or maybe up to a third of it. But we can't have them going further. So they're preparing for, you know, this really a NATO blockade again in Lithuania and Estonia and Latvia and Poland and some of these other places. So they're trying to block him from going any further. I don't think he wants to, and nor does he really honestly need to go any further. He's going to build that up. He's going to block them off, and then he's going to say, "Come pay me for my gas." That's what he's going to do, and he's going to get really rich and do very well. President of Turkey, Erdogan, will go to Ukraine on February 3rd and meet with President Zelensky. I want to remind you that Erdogan has been selling UAVs and weapons to Ukraine. He's trying to make huge deals with them. They've been buying them. And so Turkey's got a lot to win and lose on this. But it's really interesting. This is going to be another area. And again, you read Ezekiel 38, you know how it comes down. They're going to be friends. But Turkey's like, hey, we can make hay while the sun's shining here, and get a lot of money, get them some protection, kind of ward off Russia. I think, if I remember right, Turkey's Erdogan said, hey, come on down, Putin, let's talk about this. And Putin said, you come up here, we'll talk about it. Erdogan wants to work through this because he's got some games to play, and we'll continue to watch how that plays out. Let's move into the Middle East in particular. The United States wishes to kill the East Med pipeline, and yet has canceled all sanctions against Russia's Nord Stream 2. Now, this has not been official. However, it's in the mind of the Biden administration, because they visited and they said, they made comments like, we don't want the Med pipeline, the East Med pipeline. The Biden administration wants to shut down another pipeline. Now, he's brave enough to shut down the Canada XL pipeline through the United States. Now he wants to kill everybody else's joy. And then, again, remember, it was like the second or third most important thing he did when he became president was he canceled the sanctions. He set up sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 and canceled them that same day. Now, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Why write the memo? Why not just say, I'm not going to sanction them? No, we're going to send you a message. Oh yeah, well, Putin, he's not taking your messages. Leave them at the door. Throw them in the trash. And I want to remind you what Amir was saying. Biden did not make any move in regards. I still need an editor. Anybody want to step up and edit my slides? That's a joke. It's too quick. Did not make any move in regards to NATO growing bigger and bigger until this point, when he saw America at its weakest point politically. I don't know the state of the U.S. military right now, Amir says. I don't know the state of the U.S. politics and the U.S. diplomacy. It's bankrupt right now. No one talks about peace anymore. And then I wrote, we know the state of the U.S. spiritually, and we know the state of the U.S. morally. So we do know. We know. And I can tell you, after being in the Air Force for 22 years and keeping track of what's going on, that the military is focused on transgender rights and the vaccine and all this other junk. That's the most polite word I can use right now. Is the military they're taking a back seat on this stuff and worried about this progressive agenda. And they're killing our nation. They are killing our nation. And we still have more firepower. We have enough nukes. We have all that. We have beautiful people, wonderful people. But when you put them under, like Job saying, like God was saying, you got this leader in a trackless land Guess what? You know, when David made a mistake, thousands, tens of thousands of people died. God holds the leaders responsible, and the people pay the price. And that's the way it's happening. That's what's happening. I thought I'd throw this up here just to catch your eye here a little bit. Military spending by country last year. The United States was first. Now look, it isn't even close. But why is Russia and China and Iran and North Korea and getting all the press about how much ahead they are? Because they're more aggressive, they're stealing, they're aggressive on their borders, they're doing something with it. What are we doing with it? We've got our people in Annapolis, Maryland, worried about whether they can graduate without the mandate vaccine, you know, that kind of stuff. This is what we're doing. And so Tom Hughes, anybody watch Tom Hughes' stuff? Tom Hughes had a good video the other day, and he showed some advertisements for the military, and how, you know, the Chinese are kicking booty and taking names, and so are the Russians, and you're gonna, you know, and then they show a cartoon. They show a cartoon about was it a LGBT?
Yeah.
LGBT coming. And it was a female.
Yeah, she was raised by her two moms.
Yeah, right. Raised by two moms, and it's a cartoon, for crying out loud. And she said, I can make it, I can win, and I can do, and we're going, you just gotta be kidding me. It's like the Chinese are standing back going, I think we're in trouble. We're in trouble. No, they're making fun of us. They're making fun of us, and I just want to cry because I was there. I tell you what, I had a fantastic career. I had a really, 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 really good career. Wonderful people and a mighty military, and during the Reagan era, and it was fantastic. But we're in trouble. But look, I want you to look at Saudi Arabia. Now that doesn't seem a lot like according to us, but for them in the Middle East, and they're ahead of Germany and France. You see the problem? This is ridiculous. And so we're supposed to go over there and help these people like this. And Biden, you know what? If I was the EU, I'm going, hey, wait a minute, time out. And in fact, when Trump was a problem for the EU, they didn't like him. Merkel and Macron and these other people were saying, yeah, we need to dump the U.S. They're out. We need to build our own forces and stuff. Now that Biden comes on, locks arms with the EU, right? And they're all together in on this and this whole thing again. And Biden isn't doing anything. Why isn't he shipping oil over there? Why isn't he shipping gas? Why isn't he shipping arms and weapons? Hey, Estonia, I'm going to give you 10,000 troops, Estonia. I'm just going to send a message. We're not going to send them to Ukraine, but I'm going to send 10,000 or 20,000 troops into Poland, and we're going to send a message. He's not doing anything for them. This is the blindness of the EU. They're going to get what they pay for. You know, they're going to get it. But I am going to say this again, and again, go back and watch the other update, because now, with this latest incursion, and it is an incursion into Crimea, and Donbass and whatever's coming, the EU at some point has to make a decision. They have to get back into the kitchen. They have to put their metal together again and get some tanks and some troops and a security force. And this may very well do it. And I want to say this again, because this was the primary emphasis there. I believe that the Magog issue, when it happens, God decimates those troops. It isn't EU. It isn't the United States. God kills them. That's clear. When that happens, that's going to bring peace to the Middle East. That's going to calm things down. But what happens then? That's when the Antichrist rides. That's when the Antichrist rides. And I believe he's going to be a whole part of that. And he's going to come into that vacuum. And he's going to, because it says the nations are going to see that God left them behind. So the Antichrist, he's going to be a witty man set up by Satan. And he's going to think, you know, I'm going to make peace with Israel. I'm going to strengthen this covenant, maybe the Abraham Accords. And we're going to strengthen this covenant. and make peace with them, and then he's going to get haughty and filled with the devil, and he's going to break that peace treaty. But for that to happen, the EU, that Western government has to become strong at some point. So you've got Putin, and I named this Putin's war to lose, because God has given it to him to win. And now he's going to build up, he's going to do all this, he's going to scare the world, and that ought to, equal an opposite reaction. That ought to tell the EU, we better get off our tushes here. We better stand up against this guy. This guy could keep coming. Right now, he could keep coming. He could keep coming. And I think that he could probably talk Turkey and maybe China, but he could talk Turkey and Iran to say, hey, let's just keep going. Let's take Poland and Latvia and let's go to the Baltic and let's just shut this down. And then we've got free reign. They can't do a bloody thing because we're not there to stop them. If we were there now, he couldn't, but we're not there to stop them. The only thing that's stopping them as like a World War III thing is the nuke issue. The nuke issue is a big deal. And I don't think Biden would use them, but maybe a Truman would or something. But anyway, so look at Germany and France. That's just ridiculous. And Trump has a right to be totally, absolutely upset. We've been paying for the world's security for a long time. Now it's coming back to haunt him. It's coming back to haunt him. Look at little UK. Let me go back. Oh, sorry. UK, 59,000. They're the next one behind Russia. UK is serious. You know why? Because they almost got taken out in World War II. And they got the mindset of Trump. They got the second Trump over there, the hair guy. So he's all like, hey, we got to be serious here. And so I like him. Yeah, him and Trump are almost twins. Yeah. So here, this was interesting. A U.S. Navy carrier strike group and a U.S. Air Force bombers conducted simulated military strikes near Iran over the weekend, reminding the Persian nation why they should not provoke the United States of America. In response to Iranian military posturing, the USS Abraham Lincoln strike group launched assets from a Carrier Wing 7, working in sync with B-52 bombers in the U.S. Air Force. According to the task force, a task and purpose, the exercises included mock missions, formation flying, and other exercises. So that's a good thing. But the Vienna talks still continue. There's still all that talk about, are we going to sanction Iran? Are we going to make a deal with them? Are we going to make a treaty with them? Everybody really in the EU, the UK, and others are saying it's just not going to go through. But Biden keeps pushing this agenda to try to get this through, so we'll continue to watch. I also updated you a couple days ago on this, and I want to bring it again to the forefront because this is a huge change in Syria. This is a big deal. I see it. In this context, Syria sources noted that deployment of Russian forces began a few days ago after the Putin-Bennett call. Now, it's not new that the Russian police, who are really basically special forces, they're wearing Russian flags, military IDs, they're securing towns, Golan Heights, they're putting the Russian flags up on the Israeli and Jordan borders there. And the other day, they took control of the port. Now see, Russian ships were going in, they would unload, take it to the Khomeini Air Base there, and the Russians' biggest base there in Syria. Now, they own the port. They're ruling the port. And that is a big, big deal. What is that doing? It's telling the Israelis, back off. It's telling them to back off. Your time is coming to an end. Sources affiliated with the Syrian opposition report that in the last 2 days, Russian military police forces have been deployed in the port of Latakia. The official excuse, fear of terrorist activity. That's Israelis. According to the Syrian sources, the background to the Russians entry into the port is the attacks attributed to Israel about a month ago on a container complex at the port. According to these sources, the Russians will work to prevent the import. Now watch this, because this was a few days ago. This last verse, or last paragraph, and then I'm going to show you something that just came out today. According to these sources, the Russians will work to prevent the import of Iranian weapons and fuel intended for Hezbollah and the pro-Iranian militias in Syria, which is carried out by sea. So they're telling the world, we're going to back Iran up for you again. Well, first of all, they haven't done that. You remember when we started this back in, when did we start this? 2015, I think. In 2015, when Russia came to the Bosporus, we were starting on this stuff, and Russia, when Obama gave him the, hey, go ahead in, what Russia did was make a deal with Turkey and a deal with, and what we're going to do, Israel and the West, don't worry, we're going to keep Iran away from the borders. We've got these no-go zones and stuff, and those never held up. They never held up. Russia's lied from day one. Now watch. The Russian army posted military police forces at Latakia port on the 26th, just 48 hours after announcing joint missions with Syrian Air Force over the Golan and Euphrates borders. So now, Turkey and Russia are running joint patrols along the north. They're on their like the 100th mission or somewhere in there. Now Russia is running joint patrols with Syrians along the Golan and the Euphrates. What does Ezekiel say? You will be a guard over them. The police units have set up quarters at the container area of the port, patrolling the entire facility. Photos of the operation were unusually released to Russian media. These military police units are in fact categorized as special forces. The Israeli force has struck Latakia's container port in those 2 days, aiming at advanced weapons. According to the ministry's announcement, military police will henceforth be conducting round-the-clock patrols of the seaport of Latakia. They own the port, armed with armored vehicles. Moscow has thus drawn a defense line for impeding Israeli airstrikes, ranging from the Golan to the southeast and to the east to Latakia. The port is adjacent to Russia's permanent air base in Hymim. Israel was not notified of either of the news. They have been talking, but Israel was not notified of this joint maintenance mechanism here, coordinating Israel's air operations against Iran's military presence in the country. These steps also provided Moscow with an answer to the Assad regime's long-standing complaint about the non-use of Russian-supplied S-300 and 400 air defense systems. So remember, they've been there about 4 years. The S-300, 400 systems have been there for several years, haven't really been used, a little bit here and there. But now, see, now when Russia attacks that port, now there's a possibility of killing Israel. When Israel attacks that port, there's a possibility of Russians being killed. And so, what point do the Russians go on defense and use their own systems to shoot down Israeli planes? We'll have to wait and see. This out today. On top of that, this out today. Russia lets Iranian armed planes land at its Syrian airbase. So this continued coordination, and I would even say integration of forces between Syria and Russia, and now Iran and Russia, and this is getting very problematic for Israel as we go forward. And a major concession to Iran, and the third setback in a week for Israel, Moscow is for the first time allowing Iranian weapons-laden flights land at the Hymim Air Base. That's the big base for the Russians there. This follows the announcement of the joint Russia-Syria air patrols over the Golan and the deployment of Russian military police units at the Syrian port of Latakia after it was bombed by Israel as a primary portal for the intake of Iranian weapons shipments for its surrogate forces. Hymim is the main hub of Russia's military operation in Syria. Our sources report that a joint Russia-Syria air defense exercise was conducted this week, another inhibitor of the continuation of Israeli attacks. Now they have incorporated the Syrian troops into the Russian exercises so that they can take part together against future Israeli attacks. That's where this is leading. And this is very problematic for Israel, to say the least. Israeli observers see Russia-Syrian flights as a sign of aspiring Putin hegemony, allegiance to Assad. This strengthening between the Russians there. A Russian Defense Ministry announcement on Monday regarding joint Russia and Syrian Air Force patrols along the Golan Heights in southern Syria near Israel and over the Euphrates River in northern Syria represents significant messaging from Moscow over its intentions. Israeli observers have said they represent a route tracing Syria's borders, and that is a message that sharpens the Assad regime's sovereignty over the area once called Syria. He said the joint flights, which approach Syria's borders with Iraq as well, could also be seen as a message to the United States, according to which Russia is back. Russia's message is that it is good to rely on, see, on the heels of Afghanistan. Russia's message is that it is good to rely on, and that it is a serious country that supports its friends and which does not hesitate to activate for that purpose. This can be seen in a wider context going beyond the Israeli context. It could also be tied to Ukraine, where the message of not being afraid to activate force and offering real support for friends while others are not reliable allies could have an impact. I've never really liked the sound of this word, but it's so vital in using right now, that word feckless, where we outnumber, we just cream everybody out as far as cream of the crop of the military and our economy and everything, and we are absolutely feckless. We can't do anything, and we won't do anything. This isn't part of the trend that has slowly been developing in Syria, in which the balance of power between the Assad regime, Iran, Russia, and Israel have been changing, and the orchestrator of this balance is Gog. You will be an umbrella, a guard over them. And the orchestrator is Putin, said the former Air Force commander. Putin is interested in completing the hegemony that is building in Syria through a puppet named Assad, and that's true. So long as the Syrian war raged, he needed Iran. That meant Russia was willing to accept the corridor that Iran built to Hezbollah in Lebanon and Iranian malign action against Israel as long as Iran was activating force to help defeat rebel forces that had threatened Assad. As time passes by and it becomes clear that Assad is consolidating his takeover, the Russian interest of allowing Iran to be in Syria is decreasing. It is in Israel's interest to allow Russia to push the Iranians out of Syria, he argued. Now, on a continual basis, I hear people talk like this. I see lots of articles with this last statement. Lots of them. That Russia is not interested in having Iran there. In fact, they would actually like them to leave. But we have a couple things playing here. Number one, Assad is Alawite. He is Shiite. He's not going to let Hezbollah leave. He's not going to let Iran leave. He doesn't want them to leave. He knows that if Russia ever was to go away in his little pea brain, he needs Iran. Iran would have him killed. Iran would kill him. So that's not going to happen, okay? So Russia's interest here is that partially. They're selling weapons to Iran. Iran is a bases there. If they need Iranian bases, they've used them there before. And there's some other things going on there. Oil is involved. Iran is buying Russian oil and all that kind of stuff. So there's a whole bunch going on here. By the way, Iran has frenemies and friends in Azerbaijan and some other places. So it's a little bit more complicated than this. And let's just suffice it to say this. Ezekiel 38 says they're going to be together. So these two are tied at the hip and are not going anywhere. So Iran sees ties with Russia as a new Middle East. Iran oil sales, return of revenues reach irreversible levels. What is the blessing on these guys? What is this? It's interesting. The top Iranian security official said the sale of Iranian oil and the return of its money has reached suitable and irreversible levels. It does not make sense to promise to lift sanctions that have become ineffective while expecting concession from the other side. This is on the Vienna Treaty. These remarks by Shamkhani came a few days after President Raisi said that while his administration wants to make sure the sanctions are lifted, it has no worries over the sale of oil anymore. We already told you, China's buying it. There's other countries buying it. Syria is still buying it. Russia's, they're transporting it to Syria. Venezuela. So prior to that, Raisi has said that oil exports had increased by 40% as compared to the time before he assumed presidency. He just took presidency several months ago. So Iran is sitting high on a hog. And gas prices and oil prices are through the roof. I don't know. I'll say this. We had an elders meeting today, went through the budget, and the gas heating for this building went up 300%. 300%. Iran pushing to increase ballistic missile range to cover Europe. They fired off a missile. Actually, they didn't fire off a missile. They tested an engine. While sluggish nuclear negotiations in Vienna continue without a breakthrough, Iran continues to exert pressure and threats. Moreover, Iran is more than just implying that it has other options if no arrangement is reached, including linking the advanced nuclear capabilities that it reached to the past year and its ballistic missiles that could reach Europe. A conservative Iranian newspaper close to the regime recently reported that a solid fuel engine tested in Iran could reach Iranian missile range 3,000 miles. 3,000 miles. That's pretty near across the United States. On the same note, you remember that the Houthis fired some missiles into the UAE, and that was about a week or so ago, and now Iran is threatening the tallest tower in the Middle East, and the United States is taking it seriously, saying people should not visit that tower. In fact, maybe you should leave. Boy, there's a ton of pressure on Biden right now to put the Houthis back on the terrorist list, because see, when he took them off the terrorist list, then he can ship food to people who need it. And I sort of understand that. But number one, who's stealing that aid? Who's taking that food? And who's it helping? And they've just been emboldened to go after people. And it's just ridiculous. That's one of the first things he did as well, by the way. The new U.S. State Department guide calls on Americans to reconsider travel to the UAE. That's enough of that. Israel's President Herzog meets the UAE Crown Prince, received by honor. It's the first Israeli president to go to the UAE. UAE is out in front of everybody on making this Abraham Accords work, and it's going a long ways. The U.S. informs Israeli is no longer supporting. Yeah, I already went through that. Okay, let's see. Okay, enough of that. Let's finish here for the next few minutes. I hope to finish this God's iron hand. Remember, Moses was God's hand. Moses had a staff. It was a family staff in his hand. He said, throw the family staff to the ground. It became a serpent. And then, of course, remember, put your hand in your cloak, and it came out leprous. So God is sending his miracles through the typology of Moses. He also does it with other people. He gives the judgments to Jeremiah and Isaiah and Ezekiel. They open their mouth. They are the hand of God. There's a scroll put in their hands. That kind of thing. Remember, the angel touched that, took something in his hand and put it on the lips. And Isaiah's lips were touched. So God has this imagery of a hand, his hand. But when he is doing it, he's always using people. He's always using people. Now, he's going to do some mystical things, and he's done some of those things that we would call kind of mystical, you know, they're miracles. But he, in general, wants to work through his creation. So he says in Isaiah, and I again, that's on that the last Magog update too, if you want to go through there, how God is going to use Magog like he used the Assyrians, the Babylonians. Go look that, and I think it's a good trace. But look, it starts right out in Isaiah chapter 1, chapter 2, 3, it keeps going. And by the time you get to Isaiah chapter 9, which when you say Isaiah chapter 9, you should be thinking Merry Christmas. Unto us a child is born. Micah 5, right? So you have broken the rod of his oppressor. Who has broken? God, through the hand, has broken the rod of the oppressor, the Assyrian. The typology of the Antichrist is in Isaiah chapter 7 through 9 and 10, okay? And then you go into Babylon, by the way. So, how's he going to do this? How is he going to break the rod of the oppressor? Unto us a child is born. Jesus is the second hand of Moses. He is going to be God's rod. Okay? The first, remember the scepter is in the king's hand. He reaches it out, it's an extension of his hand. When a warrior has a rod, it's an extension of the king's hand. Okay? God goes from talking about the Assyrian rod to the rod of Christ to the rod of Israel. Revelation 2:21. Then he goes to the church. The one who conquers and who keeps my word until the end, to him I will give authority over the nations. He will. Who's that? That's you and me. You will rule them with a rod of iron, and with the earthen pots are broken in pieces, even as I myself have received authority from my Father. Now, if we stopped right about here, it would say, and he will rule. We go, well, that's Jesus. No, this is Jesus, even as I. We, even as I, as he did. We will rule with him, and so God's going to rule, and we are going to be the scepter in his hand. Okay? So, the past. This is what happened in the past. Exodus. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So God's going to compel him. Exodus 6. But the Lord said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do for Pharaoh, to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will send, for with Pharaoh's strong hand he will send Israel out, and with strong hand he will drive them out of his land. Exodus 17. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. And whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. Deuteronomy 26:8. The Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with the great deeds of terror, with signs and wonders. God did it by his hand through the hands of his prophets, the hands of his servants. Bad and good. Okay? The present. That was the past. Let's talk about the present a little bit. Isaiah 36. Beware lest Hezekiah mislead you, saying, now this wasn't the past, but I'll bring it up. The Lord will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? I want to remind you that the king of the Assyria is the typology of the Antichrist, Micah 5. The type of the Antichrist, and he will say, you're in my hand. Isaiah 26, O Lord, your hand is lifted up, but they don't see it. Let them see your zeal for your people and be ashamed. Let the fire for your adversaries consume them. Future, Ezekiel 38. Behold, I'm against you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you about and put hooks in your jaws, and I will bring you and all your army out. Ezekiel 38:11, and say, I will go up against the land of unwalled villages. I will fall upon the quiet people who dwell securely, all of them dwelling without walls and having no bars or gates, to seize spoil and carry off plunder, to turn your hand against the wasted places that are now inhabited. Who gave him the authority to do that? God. God put it in the hand of Gog to do this. Ezekiel 38:17, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Are you the one of whom I spoke in former days by the hand of my prophets? I want to remind you that, remember, the prophets are giving the oracles, they're giving the judgments, they're announcing it. So it's by the hand of the prophets that this thing is being carried out. Ezekiel 39:21, and I will set my glory among the nations, and all the nations shall see my judgment that I have executed, and my hand that I laid on them. I'm saying this because just as he did during the time when Moses, during Midian, Joshua, the sun standing still, when they fought the Amorites, when David, took the heights and all those things, when Caleb took the heights, when he did it there, he's going to do it the exact same way through the hand of his prophets. Now, the main way, the second time, is interesting. Future. Isaiah 11, in that day the root of Jesse, who shall stand up as a signal for the peoples, of him shall the nations inquire, and his resting place shall be glorious. In that day the Lord will extend his hand a second time to cover the remnant that remains of the people, from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, which is Egypt, from Cush, which is Ethiopia and Sudan, from Elam, which is Iran, Shinar, which is Iraq, from Hamath, which is Syria, and from the coastlands of the sea, which is probably Turkey and then Greece. Isaiah 11:12, he will raise a signal for the nations, and will assemble the banished of Israel, and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. But they shall swoop, who? Jesse, the root of Jesse, and the Israelites with them, will swoop down on the shoulders of the Philistines in the west, and together they shall plunder the people of the east. They shall put out their hand against Edom and Moab, which is Jordan. And the Lord will utterly destroy the tongue of the sea of Egypt, and will wave his hand over the river with his scorching breath. Who's going to wave his hand? Who waved his hand to part the sea? Moses. Jesus is the second Moses. He will extend his hand a second time through Jesus Christ. I can see Jesus Christ standing here and waving his hand, and he's going to scorch the sea. The sea of Egypt was never scorched before. He's going to scorch it with a breath and strike it into 7 channels, and he will lead people across in sandals. It says he's going to send a deliverer to Egypt. Again? This is happening again. This is going to happen again. Micah 5, one of my favorites now. Then the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many peoples, like the dew of the Lord, like the showers on the grass, which delay not a man, nor wait for the children of man. And the remnant of Jacob shall be among the nations, in the midst of many peoples, like a lion among the beasts of the forest, like a young lion among the flocks of sheep. Hang on for a second. We know that the peace is coming. We know that the lion will lay down with the lamb and all of that stuff. But when a lion lies amongst the beast of the forest, that's a different imagery. Like a lion among the flocks of sheep, which it goes through, it treads down and it tears in pieces, and there is none to deliver. Your hand shall be lifted up over your adversaries, and all your enemies shall be cut off. This is fantastic. This is Deuteronomy. This is God saying, I told you I was going to do something. And it's taken thousands of years, but I'm going to do it. And you're going to wipe out your enemies. You're going to plunder those people who plundered you. This conspiracy of Psalm 83. Micah 7:14, shepherd your people with your staff, the flock of your inheritance. Doesn't that look like the Moses staff? That's the Moses staff, the Shevet. Shepherd your people with your staff, the flocks of your inheritance, who dwell alone in a forest, in the midst of a garden. Let them graze in Bashan and Gilead as in the days of old. Zephaniah 2. He will stretch out his hand against the north and destroy Assyria. And he will make Nineveh a desolation, a dry waste like the desert. That's what's coming. So when we see what's happening in the world, I want you to try to picture God's hand. Who has he been using? Real briefly, Who has he used to send missionaries throughout the world for hundreds of years? The West, the church, the UK, the United States church, the Canadian church, the Christian church. He extended his hand in peace. But there's coming a time where it will be war. Michael Boutros is a 90-year-old and the last Christian in Syria's Idlib. The last Christian in Idlib recalls his community. Boutros, who had left his house for the past 10 years, said, "We witnessed battles and all kinds of calamities, but we did not leave Idlib during the clashes between the Syrian regime and the opposition in 2015. I stayed here in my house. I was very happy. I was relaxed and reassured. All things considered. At the time, my neighborhood was surrounded with cluster bombs, missiles, and weapons, but I never ran away. Better off without security. I use kerosene oil in my house for lighting, and that's all I need. I thank the Lord for that. The Lord takes care of me while I'm here in my house." Boutros does not believe Idlib will ever return to what it was before the war. This current situation in which we live will linger on, and the harm cannot be undone. But we thank the Lord for everything and are confident that he shall take care of us. The Lord is our Father and our brother, and he is managing everyone's affairs in this war. There are good people and bad people in Idlib, he said, and since I only hang out with good people, I find myself surrounded by people who treat me well and love me. And I should find myself in the need of anything, they share their food and their drink, and they offer their help. They are not stingy with me at all, especially the Muslims among them. They never disappointed me or let me down. According to unofficial local statistics, about 10,000 Christians lived in Idlib government before, but their numbers started to decline in 2012. Most of Idlib's residents left in 2015 after the opposition took control of the city. The number of Christians in Idlib government continued to decline, and they now account for less than 1% of its residents. There are about 200 Christians still scattered throughout the government with an average age of 70 years, while there are only 10 between 20 and 40 years of old age. So finally, I'll end with this. This is for you and me. Remember, Ezekiel got the scroll, and he was given the judgment of the nations, really, of the nations. And watch what he says. Watch what God says to Ezekiel. And this is what I would hope that he would say to you. "Behold, I will make your face as hard as their faces, and your forehead as hard as their foreheads. I will make your forehead like a diamond." You started with diamond? "Harder than flint. Do not be afraid of them, or be dismayed at their presence. Even though they are a rebellious house, Son of man," he added, "listen carefully to all the words I speak to you, and take them to heart." We can have great courage in the midst of all the stuff that we're facing. The wildfire flashes of these variants, and the mandates, and the ridiculous regulations coming down on our heads, and now possible food shortages and fuel shortages, and what's going to happen in war. And Jesus, Matthew 24, said this is exactly what's going to happen. Exactly. So we should say, okay, so you were right. I've got to stand up. I've got to stand up and be courageous. I've got to help my friends. We've got to be here for each other. We've got to pray for each other and uphold everybody's burdens, and be as joyous as possible in our situations. Let's pray. Lord, we love you. We praise you. Thank you for letting us see your hand. Thank you for letting us see that you are in control, that he's a puppet. He's greedy. He's using the base knowledges of gravity and weapons systems. Lord, you are ahead of a mighty host. You have a great assembly. You're sitting on your throne in heaven right now, strategizing against these would-be leaders. You've already got them figured out. You just got to bring us through. The hardest thing for us, Lord God, is that we don't see it sometimes. We don't know it. We don't understand it. But we know this. You saved us. We know in our hearts we are saved. And we are going somewhere. We have a destiny. And we don't know how we're going to get there, exactly the trails and how hard it's going to be. But we have a destiny. And Lord, we're so grateful that we have a country that is going to be called our own. We're so grateful, Lord. Lift up our hearts, encourage us, strengthen our hearts and our minds for each other's sake and for the good of your church. May we be a light to this community and to the world, we pray. And may you be pleased by our love for you. In Jesus' name.